The following announcement has been paid for by the New World Order.
Remember this, when you're the greatest fighter in the world today, they got a name for you. They don't call you a great fighter, they call you Chael Sonnen and beat me, if you can.
And after tonight, none of you in this ring will ever be the same again.
You're talking to the Rolex wearing, diamond ring wearing, kid stealing, woo, wheeling dealing, limousine riding, jet flying, son of a gun, and I'm having a hard time holding these alligators down. Woo!
I'm gonna drink a Coors Light. That's a Coors Light because Bud Light won't pay me nothing.
And I have my cold beer. You have your cold beer? If not, you are fucking jabroni.
Wash it down with 1 beer, 2 beers, 3 beers, a shot of whiskey.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
The following announcement has been paid for by the New World Order.
Hey, welcome to the Filthy FRB show. It's Saturday, February. You're going to have to help me out with these dates, Tom. I keep messing them up.
Saturday, February 7th, 2015.
There you go. That's why I brought this guy in to help me with this. But we got another story, kind of like what we were talking about in the last episode about Anderson. News hit yesterday that the former number 1 contender for the UFC welterweight title, Jon Fitch, he tested positive for his December fight against Polaris in World Series of Fighting at elevated levels of testosterone. What are you hearing about this, Tom?
Yeah, I was really surprised to hear this yesterday. From what it sounds like, they actually busted him on the pre-fight test that was done the day of the fight or the day before, so it's in competition. I know that I've seen it reported that it was a pre-fight test. I've also seen it reported that it was a post-fight test, but what I understand is that it was one of the pre-fight tests done right before the fight in that 48-hour window.
Yeah, I know it's easy to play like, everything makes sense in the rearview mirror, but I saw when he faced off with Polaris at the weigh-in, and he flexed a little, I think it was his left arm, and I'm like, I've never seen Fitch like that. He's always been a strong guy, as most of those guys are, but I was like, why is this guy looking like he's bodybuilding?
Yeah, well, I thought it could have been just a diet change because Fitch was a pretty big proponent of a vegan or vegetarian diet there for a little while. So, maybe he just went back to eating meat and possibly had some contaminated horse meat or something along the way.
Yeah, I heard that they also vegan also means gay. Can you confirm that, or because I don't think he's gay. I think he's married, but I heard they meant the same thing.
Yeah, I was under the impression that vegan and CrossFitters were the same because that's the first thing they tell you about.
So I got to ask you about this CrossFit thing because it's like their own little cult, and I know there's some people that like to make fun of them, and I don't want to really make fun of them. I mean, they're exercising, they're trying to make themselves better, but like, is it like a little cult or something?
I don't think it's the same as some of the cults we've seen in the past, like the one that was trying to follow the spaceship.
Oh yeah,
cloaks about 20 years ago.
Yeah, I remember that out in San Diego.
Yeah, but actually, you know what? Okay, so here's the deal. People talk about CrossFit, they like to talk a lot of shit. Here's the thing: it's getting more people exercising. Some gyms are good, just like MMA gyms. Some MMA gyms are good, and some suck. Same thing with CrossFit. So it's a mixed bag, but as a whole, I think it's doing a lot more benefit than it is harm. And the chicks that do it are hot.
Well, that's a good reason to get involved with it. So any of the listeners there that are looking for a woman in their life, maybe they should join their local CrossFit gym.
Yeah.
Or that great website that Super Callow told me about, farmersonly.com, where you can be matched up with fellow farmers. And I don't even know how they verify if you're a farmer or not.
You actually can't. Now, we haven't spoke about this, Brian, but I have an account on Farmers Only. I have for a year.
No shit. You didn't tell me about this.
I promise. I'll send you a screen cap, or I can even put it up on the website on FRBshow.com.
Oh, yeah. I forgot to plug that thing.
Yeah, I'll post up a picture there if I can figure out how on the blog. So, yeah, for sure I have a Farmers Only account, and they did not verify that I'm a farmer, but, it doesn't matter. I haven't checked it in ages, and I'm not too sure the women there are up to par.
Now, was that on the advice of Super Callow or something that you found out yourself?
It was on the advice of my young nephew, who told me about it. He must have seen an ad on television, so he was actually making fun of me for being on dating sites. And this is coming from a kid that's not even in, he's like in elementary school. So,
man, that's funny. But I mean, the interesting thing about the Jon Fitch test failure was they caught. I assume that they caught that the TDE ratio was really off. Maybe it was like 12-1, 15-1. And then they sent it back for a CIR test, a carbon isotope ratio test, which detects synthetic testosterone. From what I've heard, about 2 weeks out, it will be able to tell you if they took testosterone orally or injected it.
Yeah, this is definitely, it's something that's a serious deal. It seems like the California Commission handled this a lot differently than the Nevada Commission, and maybe I'm just looking at it from a different point of view. But it seems like the California Commission went through all the correct avenues. They found out that Fitch failed the test. They sent it away to get the carbon isotope test done without making a big deal out of it. And it comes back that Fitch was indeed using illegal performance-enhancing drugs. And more kudos to the California State Commission. Andy Foster, I know, was coming from Georgia, I believe, when he took over this California State Athletic Commission. And it seems like he's done a great job over there.
Yeah, it's interesting you say there was a difference between the way Nevada has been handling things and the state of California, and I think it comes down to Andy Foster knows what the hell he's doing. There was also a story, it didn't really get out, but it was last July, and from what I'm told, he called up the UFC and said, this was before that card at Staples Center, the pay-per-view, that got canceled. I think it was Aldo versus Mendez. Mm-hmm. And it was about, I'm a little off on the timeline. It might be 6 weeks out. He said, he called them on a Thursday and said, you got a week to get everyone licensed because I'm starting out of competition random testing. So he knew to test these guys, he needed to have them licensed. So he had the legal right to suspend them if anything came back, if anybody got flagged. So the conspiracy is that a few of the guys got wind of this and they weren't ready to be tested. So they said, no, I'm not going to, put in for a license. And that's the real reason why that card got canceled.
Yeah, I hadn't heard any of that. But once again, I'm kind of on the outside looking in compared to you. I'm sitting like in the cheap seats, not in the front row. So I don't know too much about that. So I defer to you on that subject.
Yeah, but what makes it interesting to me is it seems like Foster has a real interest in cleaning up his state. Implementing random testing, not just for the main event guys. I mean, that goes without saying, but also, guys, the curtain jerkers, so to speak. He wants to test them too.
Yeah, and from what I understand, Foster has been involved in the sport for quite a long time. He was on the scene early, and I think as the sport progresses and there's less boxing shows being run, there's more mixed martial arts shows being run, you'll see more of a kind of like a shift to management in the athletic commissions to people who understand mixed martial arts a little bit better. And anytime you get athletes going or former athletes or people who have been involved in the scene, who aren't coming from like a promoter standpoint or a money standpoint, and they are put in a position of power, I think they're going to do a great job of making sure that there's a level playing field. And we're already seeing that with people getting busted left and right. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, and I think, it just gets back to it would be so easy for the UFC to clean this up. All they would have to do is invest. I mean, I've seen estimates that it would cost them less than $2 million. So for those 10 Ferraris that Dana has, he could give up a few of them, and they could have this drug testing, and then everybody could just shut up about it. I'm one of those guys, I really don't care that much. I kind of just like the spectacle of guys getting in the cage and trying to figure out who's better. But that's easy for me to say as a fan. It's not my livelihood. Whereas, if I'm in your position, Tom, and I know I'm clean, and then I start seeing somebody who's just, taking a bunch of shit and is advancing in his career and taking money out of my pocket, I'm going to be really fucking pissed off.
Yeah. But at this point, I've kind of just come to terms with it that, the fact that guys aren't on the level, guys are using performance-enhancing drugs. They have been since I started fighting. They were far before I started fighting, and they'll continue to be in the future. People are going to figure out how to beat these tests. As a fighter, it sucks if you're clean, but you kind of know the deal going in. I'm not sure how much PEDs would help me perform at all, but I'll tell you, I would be fucking juiced up for those entrances.
You don't need any help on those entrances. You got that. I mean, you're legendary. I mean, I bring up your name, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I love that guy's entrances."
Yeah.
Does he still fight? That's their next question.
Hey, if I could get paid just to enter the cage, I would do it every single time. So I'm of the mindset that, like, hey, you know how John Lineker and Kelvin Gastelum are coming in way overweight? Yeah. Shit. Don't even fight them. Just take your weigh-in money and, put on a little show maybe see if they'll let you walk out to the cage, put on an entrance, and then go home.
Yeah, I was surprised, Tyron Woodley decided to take that fight because, I mean, it was just so obvious come fight night that Gastelum was just so, he was huge. I mean, I think he was maybe 205 or more, and I was just like, man, UFC must have really said, hey, we're going to take care of you, and then we're going to take care of you on that because we can't have a co-main event killed. Yeah.
Now, like, as far as Woodley's mindset, and, I was kind of joking a little bit before saying I would just rather, get the weigh-in money. When you put in months and months of a training camp and then you find out the guy's overweight and they give you the option of, well, you can go home and wait and we'll call you, or get in there and fight and we'll probably help you out on the back end, you're usually going to take that option.
Yeah, and I guess then there's also the element of, if you bow out and say, no, I don't want to fight this guy because he'll be too heavy, you don't look good to the fans, right? And this is the tough guy business.
Yeah, exactly. It would hurt your public persona, which, as we can attest to with John Jones, nobody wants to do that. So,
and it'll piss off Joe Silva, who is an ornery little fuck, I've heard.
Whoa. I wouldn't say that, but I would definitely see how it would piss him off big time. Because it would certainly mess with his job, probably more than anybody else's, really.
Yeah, and I say that, in a joking manner. Joe Silva's been, he's a nice guy anytime that I've talked to him. Not that I see him all that often. But, so in California with Fitch, it looks like he's going to get a 9-month suspension, and they cap the fine at $2,500, which is interesting to me because if you look at what Nevada does, 30%. I mean that's like that's a gangster move. I mean, they're just stealing money from guys, 30%, and these guys cap it at $2,500. I know you wouldn't be in that position, but do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
It depends who you are. If you're Jon Fitch, it's a good thing. Another thing that California does, they don't release exactly what the results were. So we'll never know, exactly what the results of that test were, it appears. But yeah, the $2,500 fine, capping it at that, seems a bit, it doesn't deter guys like I would think a bigger fine would. You hear 30% of your purse, and I mean, it's public record. You can look it up. I mean, for me, for my next fight, that would be about $12,000. And I sure as hell don't want to give up that kind of money for failing a drug test. So, I think that they should keep the higher fine as opposed to this $2,500 crap.
Yeah, I don't know what would have to happen for that to be changed. I don't know if that's a state of California statute or something. Like, it's buried in the fifth article, 8th subsection of some kind of complicated bill. I don't know why it's so low, because it would seem like, like you said, I mean, that's not much. There's not much there. And, 9 months, I mean, shit, a lot of guys go 9 months, just to kind of take a breather.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of guys, aren't going to fight in that 9-month time span anyways. $2,500, that's like another training expense. I don't know. The situation's just kind of, it's on the back burner a little bit based on, the big test failures earlier this week. So it's not going to get as much play in the media as the Anderson Silva case would. And for good reason. Jon Fitch is kind of not on the outs, but he's on a downslide compared to where he used to be in the standings. But this comes as a big surprise if anybody that's followed his career. And, I don't know how much of a shadow it casts on his past performances, but things don't look good for the future.
Yeah, it's especially surprising because he came out in 2013 and was so against the guys using testosterone replacement therapy legally. And he was just going after those guys, and he said stuff like the only reason why they have to take it is because they were using anabolic substances, in their early 20s, so they totally killed their system, and that's why their testosterone is so low. And they're being allowed legally to use this substance because they cheated in their youth.
Yeah. Another thing that we haven't talked about, Brian, is I wonder what effect, if any, because I'm not sure that it legally can, what effect, if any, it'll have pertaining to the lawsuit that Fitch has filed against the UFC.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I mean, it doesn't make him look too good. I mean, it certainly doesn't help his credibility that he's just outed as even at the best, a hypocrite. At best, a hypocrite. So, but I don't know the legality if that would affect any of the class action lawsuit. And, I watched a little something on Bloody Elbow this morning, and it was John Nash, who has been covering this for a while, the lawsuit. Kid Nate, I think his name is Nate Wilcox. And I think, I know his first name is Brian, but last name is probably D'Souza or something like that. I forget his Twitter handle. And they were talking about the lawsuit. And basically, it sounded to me, they had a lot more poignant commentary than me on it, but it's kind of hurry up and wait. At this point, at first it has to be qualified as a class, and then other guys can join, or there's several lawsuits might be combined into one, and then they have to agree on a venue. So it seems like things are gonna move real slow with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then there's been the new, Mac Danzig has been named in a different lawsuit. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. It doesn't look good for Fitch on any level, basically.
Yeah, and Fitch is, I think he's having some money problems, and that's not me letting anything out of the bag. Like he's publicly said, in the 2008, 2009, he bought a couple houses trying to speculate on the other one while living in the other one, and he got burned, and having some money problems. Then he got fired from the UFC. I think he took a job at an LA Fitness in Syracuse, New York, just so he would have health insurance. And then I think he's in Vegas now. But I think it harkens back. I think when you're desperate, you do things that you normally wouldn't do. And it's very possible that it's just now, when he really has no way to make a living. that he's turned to performance-enhancing drugs to try to prolong his career, for that money to keep coming in. And so from that point of view, I understand it. And that's why, I was saying on Twitter the other day, for 99.9% of the guys who fight inside a cage, this is not a career. This is a career for guys like Anderson Silva and Chuck Liddell and Matt Hughes. It's a career. They can walk away and they're set for life. But if you're a guy, even someone who's had your success, you've had a ton of success. You're 5-4. You've been employed by them for 7 years. I mean, that is so much longer than average. And you can't walk away and not have to worry about money ever again, unless you have a bunch of money that I don't know about.
No.
So I think the important message is, maybe if you don't want to be caught in one of these situations of desperation, you can't treat this like a career. You got to take it seriously, but you got to have that exit strategy that, hey, if this is taken away from me tomorrow, I'm going to go do this.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's something a lot of fighters are short-sighted about. They see themselves as being in the moment and putting everything into the here and now. And I have been guilty of that in the past as well. I think as you get a little bit older, your everything around you changes, and your ability to look at yourself through a different light changes as well. And you can kind of see the situation for what it is, as opposed to having, the one-track blinders on. Because fighting is a really, really selfish sport. And if you don't have that kind of mindset, your career is probably not going to be what it could be. And it takes some downtime, some hardships to see that.
Sure. And, the other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about, there was an interview that the aforementioned John Nash of BloodyElbow.com did with Scott Coker in his the Bellator headquarters in Santa Monica. And they talked about a few different things, and I think you had a chance to kind of skim through it, Tom. One of the big takeaways was Coker, at least in this interview, said, if you want to box on Al Heyman's promotion, which is also on Spike, called Premier Boxing, if you want to go box on that, go ahead. You think he's serious?
I think he's serious. He said that there's 3 fighters who remain nameless that had contacted him about it. My guess is right off the bat, could be somebody like Melvin Manhoef or Joe Schilling, which in that case, then, yeah, sure, let those guys fight any of the 3 styles that they want. Let them fight MMA, let them fight kickboxing, let them box, because their striking is their forte. Now, if you're talking about like a champion, maybe like Will Brooks getting in there and boxing, you might want to stay away from that.
Yeah, and that's why I was kind of surprised by his response. I thought he would kind of qualify it and say, well, how Scott always talks. He says, I tell you, we'll sit down, have a conversation when that happens, and we'll have something for you middle of next quarter. Just a typical Cokerism. But yeah, he was just like, if they want to do it, go do it. But if you're promoting a guy to be one of the baddest guys on the planet in MMA, why do you want him to go across the street in boxing and get his ass kicked?
Hey, there's no saying that's what would happen, Brian. We've seen guys come from kickboxing who were the best kickboxers in the world, and then they have trouble striking in MMA. They're completely different sports. I think guys like Manhoef, Schilling, guys who have a good striking pedigree could do pretty well on undercards, maybe even boxing undercards. But, you are taking a risk letting these guys fight. If I was Coker, I probably wouldn't let any of the champions fight, because you are looking at them as an investment. But you have some of these other guys on the undercard who possibly aren't getting fights as often and are kind of on the back burner as far as promotion goes. Sure, let them get in there and fight in glory and in boxing. I think the fans at this point, if you're an MMA fan and you're watching Bellator, you're smart enough to understand the differences between the sports. And it seems like the entire business kind of as a whole is moving maybe more towards like an entertainment aspect of things than it is, the pure sport. And you can see that across the lines. There was a shift for a while with Bellator promoting the tournaments and the UFC, really priding itself on having the best fighters and the top contenders and hashing it out through number one contender fights. But you could see with this past Anderson Silva and Nick Diaz fight, that was a big time fight because of the personalities involved. And I think Scott Coker so far with Bellator has done a good job of focusing on what some of the fighters have to offer as far as personality goes. And I think that'll continue. So I don't think there's going to be a huge problem if guys jump back and forth as long as it's not the champions.
Sure. And that's a good segue into also in that interview, he mentioned Kimbo Slice, who signed like a few weeks back with Bellator, and he mentioned that his opponent is currently not on the Bellator roster, which leads me to ask, could it be a rematch of your friend Seth Petruzzelli versus Kimbo Slice? Because he's technically not on the roster. He's retired.
Yeah, from what I understand, and I could ask Seth more in depth, although he is a little low on the brain cell count, so maybe you know the answer. But Seth has said flat out that he will come back out of retirement to fight Kimbo. I believe he still has fights on that Bellator contract. From what I understand, maybe they let him go, maybe they didn't. I don't really know the answer to that. If not, there's some other possibilities. We have Alberto El Patron out there, who has been courted by a number of mixed martial arts organizations as well as pro wrestling, a.k.a. Alberto Del Rio, a.k.a. Dos Caras Jr. So maybe they're going to go for a big money fight with him. They've also, not been shy about the fact that they're going to try to get Brock Lesnar, although I don't know how that'll work out in the long run. But imagine, a Brock Lesnar versus Kimbo fight. Or, you could pull Jose Canseco into Bellator. You could pull Herschel Walker into Bellator.
But he lost his finger, Tom. Canseco. You didn't hear about that?
Yeah, you know what? Actually, I did hear about that, but I think there was a little bit of foul play involved there on the part of Jose Canseco.
So are you saying that it was a work? That he didn't lose his finger? Or?
I believe so. Let me double check on this. Let's move on, and then I'll come back. I'll come back to that. Oh yeah, Jose Canseco right on TMZ. My finger didn't fall off. It was a prank.
Oh, okay. See, I fell for it. But you know, I was gonna, because we were talking about Glory a little bit. The latest rumor is that Glory put an offer on the table to Alberto El Patron or Alberto Del Rio, however you want to say it, which to me was really interesting because I was like, well, if anything, MMA would be his thing because he's got that Greco-Roman wrestling background, and his striking looked absolutely horrid against Crow Cop. I was like, why does he want to entertain an all-striking, organization?
Yeah, maybe he feels he has something to prove, Coming from, like, pro wrestling rules, too, for those of you out there who aren't familiar, you cannot use a closed fist per the rules of professional wrestling. So he'd really be at a disadvantage considering that's the style he's been training in for the past, 10 years since he got his head kicked off by Crow Cop.
And I also heard he had been training with The Undertaker, and The Undertaker is considered the best pure striker in the history of sports entertainment, according to Michael Cole. And who am I? Who am I to argue?
Pound and pound.
Yeah, and who am I to question Michael Cole?
Yeah.
He's seen a lot more fights than I have.
The guy worked for CNN.
He was in a war zone, I heard.
Yeah, he was.
Was he like Sarajevo or something?
I thought it was the Raw is War zone.
Oh. It was that one. All right. Yeah. And then, let me go through a couple of the fights from last night on Glory. I didn't actually see it, but I know you watched it. So just like the televised fight, so like it kicked off Raymond Daniels, Jonathan Oliveira. Daniels won second round TKO. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, like Raymond Daniels is the most exciting guy on the planet to watch. He is throwing like every spinning attack on the planet that anyone has ever seen, known to man. And he actually won by TKO with quite a few spinning attacks. He had a knockdown in the first round with a back spinning heel kick. And then he actually got the win by forcing Oliveira to his knees after hitting a spinning back kick to the stomach. This is one of those fights, and like Raymond Daniels is one of these guys, kind of like Michael Page in Bellator, who's real flashy, almost like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is somewhat in the UFC, or John McDessie. They throw a lot of spitting attacks, and it's very crowd pleasing. And in this first fight, Raymond Daniels was able to just kind of pick apart Oliveira and confuse him with these spinning attacks and get 3 knockdowns and advance to the finals against the winner of our next fight.
Yeah, Niki Holskin, he defeated Alexander Strukturchenko. Unanimous decision. You're going to have to help me out on Alexander's last name.
Yeah, I believe it's Stetcharenko.
Okay, that makes sense. All right.
Stetcharenko. Yeah, that's as good as it's going to get. This was like, to me, I thought this was the best fight on the card. There was a lot of back and forth action. Alexander's face had the uncanny ability to become like bright red every time he got hit, to the point that at one point, I thought he was going to transform into the Human Torch, perhaps, because he was just like a different shade of red from getting beat up by Niki Holskin. Holskin's like a traditional Dutch kickboxer, a lot of low kick combinations. Will set it up with the hands and with the low kick. A lot of body shots from Holskin. And, he just kind of put a beating on Stetcharenko across the fight. It ended up being a unanimous decision for Holskin. Stetcharenko came on strong at the end, but Holskin was able to hold him off with really superior boxing.
Sure, and I just want to mention another guy that I talked to on Twitter that he really knows glory in kickboxing. His name is Michael Stetz. You guys might have heard of him. He choked out some drunk dude on the way back from I think they were in Croatia for a glory event, and they were flying back to New York City, and there was some drunk guy on the plane that was harassing people, and this guy Michael Stetz, he's a journalist. He choked him out, right? Like a sleeper, like a Rowdy Piper standing sleeper. Did you hear about this, Tom?
No, I haven't heard about it, but yeah, it sounds pretty awesome. It reminds me of a story that Al Stanky told me.
The legendary Al Stanky. His son was a shortstop for the New York Yankees, Andy Stankiewicz, until a young man from Kalamazoo, Michigan, came on the scene named Derek Jeter. Yeah, if you're going to get replaced by somebody, it might as well be Derek Jeter.
Yeah, I agree. He's not too bad.
I had forgotten you were on that season. I haven't seen. I drank with Al. I think the Tough 7 finale.
Really? Yeah.
And he was supposed to be cornering people, man. And
it might have been the Tough 8 finale.
Oh,
then.
the Tough 8. I'm sorry.
Was he in his Team Nogueira rash guard?
Yes, he was wearing a rash guard, and he was drinking, and security kept kicking him out, saying he couldn't corner anybody, and it was just so funny, man. He wasn't taking no for an answer.
No, he was phenomenal. He's a character, 100%. So this is a story. If I can get to this story that he told me, he tells me, right, that he was I believe he was an LAPD officer.
Yeah, during all those bad riots in the 60s. Yeah.
Yeah, he said he gets a guy in a chokehold, a rear naked choke. I don't know. He might have called it something else. Who knows? But he's got the guy in the Roddy Piper sleeper hold, and he said he starts counting 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, and everybody's like, "Well, when did you let go?" He goes, "When I counted to 100." And we said, "Hold on, what happened to the guy?" And he's like, "He was dead."
And I guess the statute. No, for murder there is no statute limitation.
Yeah,
but I guess he felt comfortable enough to tell you that story, knowing that you wouldn't tell it on a podcast that has a global listenership.
Yeah. Well, I believe he was inebriated, so that story may not be valid. Let's move on here, because this next fight was the worst fight in the history of man, or the best fight, depending on your what you like to see.
Was this the military fight?
It was the military fight. Yes.
Okay, so is that like the the boot camp match, like Iron Sheik versus Sergeant Slaughter, or was this under Glory kickboxing rules?
Fortunately for the viewers, this was under Glory kickboxing rules. Now, to me, like I said, this was one of the worst fights / best fights I've ever seen. The fight ended, basically it was a referee stoppage by pity at 56 seconds in the second round, with the Army fighter Cedric Smith defeating the Navy fighter James Hurley. Now, I knew something was going to be up when they showed James Hurley, and the guy looks like, I hate to run this guy down, but he looks like he didn't train at all. You know what he looked like? He looked like C.W. Anderson from CW.
Yeah.
Had gotten into the Glory kickboxing ring. And so they show him, and then they cut to the crowd, and they show the other members of the U.S. Navy. And there was one woman, I believe, and then two people who I couldn't tell if they were male or female, but they were in the Navy costume. So then they cut to Cedric Smith, who's like 6'5", jacked black guy. And they show, his buddies in the crowd who are, young, in shape, cheering him on. And this guy just put a beating on James Hurley. I'm not sure if Hurley hit him at all. It was like a barrage of punches, kicks, knees. They at one point they clashed heads, and of course James Hurley gets cut and Cedric Smith doesn't. So it looks pretty bad for him. And in the second round, the ref had some pity and stopped the fight. James Hurley, if you by chance listen to this, I'm sorry, buddy, but I don't think you have a future.
So the summary of that fight was James Hurley was representing the Navy. He wasn't in shape, and his fellow members of the Navy that came to support him looked like they were from the Village People. Is that just about right? Or
I don't know if I'd say the Village People. They were kind of more along the lines like they could be cast as Pat from Saturday Night Live.
Gotcha. Okay, so the next fight was Joe Schilling. He defeated Robert Thomas, who's a Canadian, better than nothing, as the Iron Sheik would say, via unanimous decision, 30-26, all three cards.
Yeah, he put a beat down on this guy. Joe Schilling, it looked to me after the first round, I thought for sure he was going to gas himself out because he threw, every shot that he threw was powerful. It was on point. And I thought there's no way he can keep this up for 3 rounds. Well, lo and behold, what do I know? Because he beat the crap out of him even worse in some of the later rounds. And to me, this kind of looked like, knowing that Joe Schilling had been training with the Diaz brothers, kind of looked to me like he went out there with the mindset that there's no way in hell that he was going to get tired. And he put a real beat down on Robert Thomas.
So where do you see Schilling going from here? Because, he's got to be... As far as Americans, he's got to be the most well-known kickboxer in Glory right now, I would think.
Yeah, my guess is he gets a return match with Artem Levin, who was also in Nick Diaz's camp. So I'm sure Schilling and Levin worked with each other there. And I think that they'll have another rematch. They're both 1-1 against each other. I believe Schilling beat him in the finals of a tournament. I think they'll have another rematch because for sure, to me, Glory's biggest star in the U.S. is Joe Schilling.
Sure. And the next match was the welterweight tournament final with Holtzkin defeating Raymond Daniels via third round TKO. What you think of that fight, Tom?
Yeah, Holtzkin, it was kind of almost like a repeat of the first fight that Holtzkin had in the tournament. He was a better technician. He would cut Raymond Daniels off and catch him in the corner nonstop. Raymond Daniels does a good job if he can keep away from you, but Holtzkin was able to trap him in the corner, use superior footwork, cut him off, and really put a beating on his body. He caught him real early on in the fight with a body shot that dropped him, and you could tell Daniels never recovered. He would get hit to the body and take a knee. I believe that the fight ended after the fourth knockdown of the fight, which under Glory rules ends it. So, Holtzkin looked dominant. He looked great. The third round started. Daniels came out, had probably his best round, but Holtzkin just waited him out and took it to him.
Sure. And then the last fight of the evening was Rico versus Errol Zimmerman, ended with Zimmerman suffering a knee injury. What was the extent of the knee injury? Was it did he tear it, or how bad was this?
Yeah, to me, it looked like Zimmerman probably tore his ACL. At first, I thought maybe like his kneecap was displaced, but after further review, it looked like maybe he just doesn't do a lot of squats for strength and conditioning. Sure. Yeah, I'm guessing he kind of tore his ACL or one of the ligaments in there. He tried a wild spinning back fist. Now, he was getting picked apart by Verhoeven and rocked earlier in the first round and in the second round. So I think it was he was fighting an uphill battle at this point. Tried a spinning back fist, was way out of position and out of control, and suffered for it. Landed bad on his leg. Looked like his knee buckled, and then that was the end of it from there. To me, and it was weird to hear the announcer say that they thought Zimmerman came in great shape because he looked like, to me, like he had eaten Daniel Cormier on his fattest day, So I think, Verhoeven's, he's a good technician, but he was definitely, one step ahead of Zimmerman. Zimmerman's got a lot of power, but he was chasing Verhoeven around. I think Verhoeven was just going to pick him apart anyways. The strangest thing to me is after the fight, I don't understand this because I've been to the Netherlands twice, but like you could see it with Alistair Overeem and you could tell with Verhoeven speaking after. They have this uncanny ability to just like sound cocky and look cocky. Like Verhoeven's talking about, how he respects Zimmerman and they'll do it again, but just the look on his face just looks so smug. I don't know if it's a cultural thing or what, but it really reminds me of the way that you see Alistair Overeem talk in interviews.
That's interesting. You would know it because in terms of being able to be marketable as a fighter, whether it be kickboxing or MMA, a good nickname will go a long way for you. And you picked a great nickname with Filthy Tom Lawlor. Now, with Rico Verhoeven, I am proposing that he adopt the nickname Uncle Rico Verhoeven. What do you think?
You'll have to explain this one to me.
You didn't see the... what the hell was the name of that movie? The guy who's talking about Napoleon Dynamite. The guy with nunchuck skills. And...
Oh, Brian, I actually have not seen Napoleon Dynamite.
Oh, man, you got to see it. Uncle Rico is Napoleon's uncle.
Okay.
And the only thing he talks about is how good of a high school quarterback he was. And he's always throwing the football around, and he can't throw the ball worth a damn, but if you ask him, he's like Joe Montana, Dan Marino, but somehow just didn't get his chance. But man, you got to see that movie. It's really funny.
I'm glad you didn't mention Tom Brady in there because if you said anybody was even close to as good as him, I'd be pissed.
Well, I don't know that much about football. I watch it, of course. And growing up, I'm in my early 30s, and to me, the guy, the best guy was always Joe Montana. He was better than Elway. He was better than any guy that you can mention in that era. And now there's some people saying Tom Brady has taken over. He's the best quarterback of all time. And what do you think, Tom? And don't be biased. I know you're a Pats fan.
Yeah, absolutely no bias here. But I think, honestly, it's tough to say because you're in the moment. People knew like Michael Jordan was the best ever as he was playing. And I think some people realized that with Tom Brady. To me, the biggest statistic is the difference in time between his first Super Bowl and this one. I mean, there's been 1 year, I believe, where the Patriots didn't make the playoffs in between there. And to have that kind of track record over a 14-year span is quite ridiculous, And like Brady took the job from a good quarterback himself, Drew Bledsoe.
Sure.
So just if you look at his longevity over the years, and the guy's been to 6 Super Bowls, he's 4-2. He's just phenomenal. You can't, and honestly, the guy's banging Giselle. I mean, how much better does it get? He's not even the breadwinner in the family.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and she's gonna be making more money than him for the rest of their lives, really, because she's got all these executive producer credits on the model reality show that they just license out to every country under the sun. Mm-hmm. And so she's got this money coming in forever. But there's a funny picture that goes around because before the NFL Combine, they take a picture of you basically in your underwear. because they want to see your body composition and all this.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a picture of Brady from the year that he was eligible for the NFL draft, and he just looks like the most average looking guy. You know, like some guy in the underground would see a picture of him, and if he didn't know if he was Tom Brady, he'd like make fun of him and say how small his arms were and how small his chest is, and then at the bottom of the picture it says 4-time Super Bowl champion.
Yeah,
and look at his wife.
Yeah, look at his wife. And let's take this into account. Remember, Montana had Jerry Rice all those years. Okay,
Right, yeah.
Granted, the Patriots have had good receivers. Tom Brady's had people to throw to, but it's like a revolving door. And you see guys leave that team and not have the same success that they did when they were on that team. You know, he's a great field general. He's phenomenal. And I don't think there's anyone better.
Now, you bring up an interesting point, because who's the best player that he's ever played with? And I assume that's Randy Moss, who's going to go to the Hall of Fame. But during Moss's tenure in New England, they didn't win a Super Bowl. So, like, who is the best player that he played with on offense during their Super Bowl years? I mean, who is it? Like David Givens, Deion Branch, or who am I forgetting?
Well, I mean, right now, you know, Gronkowski's gonna.
Oh yeah.
He's definitely knocking on that door as one of the top guys. I mean, that guy's just phenomenal. So, you know, it might be him throughout all those years, but I'd have to go back and look at who was on those teams in 2001. You know, Wes Welker was great when he was there. He didn't have the same success this year with a different team. So,
well, he's got to stay away from the Molly, right? I mean, that's the first problem.
Yeah. And then they can just like plug guys in, like Julian Edelman. Great season.
Where the hell they find him?
I don't know, but they do a great job of finding all these little white receivers that they can throw to. So I don't know how they do it, but they keep on doing it, and more power to them.
Yeah. All right, Tom. So we covered a bunch of things, and the next show, it'll come out Monday. We have she's in UFC Magazine that just came out a couple days ago. Her name is Alira Coors, and she's Australian. She's like Maxim 100, FHM, Hot 50, or whatever that is. She's a really hot chick, and can you imagine she wasted 45 minutes of her life talking to Tom and I?
I can't believe it.
Yeah, I was totally shocked, and I think she was actually happy she talked to us. That's why I was so taken back by it. I was like, it actually sounds like she wants to talk to us.
Yeah, it was really bizarre. On a personal note, I've never listened to a girl for more than 5 minutes at a time, so it was something totally new for me, and hopefully everybody enjoys it.
For sure. All right, Tom. I'll talk to you soon, man.
All right, take care.
Okay.